Okay, cool. All right, let's just jump in. So, hello, Black Maria Knights. I'm sitting here with Brandon Upson, the lead restoration artist for the boutique Blu-ray distribution company Vinegar Syndrome. Thank you for joining me today, Brandon.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
So, to start off the conversation, I wanted to ask the origins of Vinegar Syndrome. Where did this thing start? Because, as a company, you've restored and facilitated the release of over like 500 plus exploitation films, sexploitation films, just cult films in general. So, how did this thing start? Like what were the early days like, and how did it grow from there?
Well, it really started with, for me, it really started with two people, Joe Rubin and Ryan Emerson. They had met in Chicago, again, almost, nearly over 10 years now. They, kind of pooled their resources they wanted to start with the film preservation. And, when we had started too, we weren't really starting a line like a home video line per se. Originally it was purely just film scanning restorations for ourselves and other people too. Now when we had started, I joined early on, and it was just kind of crazy to jump right in with the lost films of Herschel Gore and Lewis.
Mm,
And I knew about Herschel Gordon. Of course, I didn't know about these films because they were true lost films. It really started with that too. We started, with the original Kickstarter years ago now,
mm,
and it got this company going with all of that.
mm,
A lot. It's gone through a lot of changes since then, but we still, stand by our mantra. And if anything, we've expanded it with the film preservation and restorations. It's been pretty nonstop, even
mm,
through COVID. Everything, we keep going.
mm,
We've got a lot planned, a lot of crazy, good stuff planned for the
mm.
next no good while, at
Yeah,
least.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
good. Good for us.
yeah, yeah.
And so what personally drew you into restoring these kind of films?
I mean, I was a film collector even
Mm,
early on. When for me personally, it was weird because I, love movies even when I was young, but I really didn't start like watching them thoroughly for even just enjoyment too until
mm,
when I was right out of high school, right at the end of high school. I got really sick
mm,
to to the point where I kind of had to the point I had to take a whole summer and just rest.
mm,
So I just watched, movies after movies. And after that, it really got me into, looking at this. Okay, these films they're talking about film restoration and everything. That sounds interesting. I
mm.
started doing actual film production work,
Oh, wow.
all, really no budget,
Yeah,
local
yeah.
films and stuff. Nothing, no crazy names or anything like that. But yeah,
Mm,
I got started with it. I went to school for video editing and everything like that.
mm,
And then one day, a friend of mine contacted me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in quality control?" And I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" And they said, "Well, you're going to be watching these old video again 10 years ago. These old like video masters.
yeah,
See how they're doing it." And now I didn't really think about what that actually meant. I said, "Oh, cool! Watch movies.
yeah.
Check it out. Get paid for it." It was a lot more detailed than that, and it was originally it was a client job. It
Mm.
was like these. They're not my cup of tea, but like the old Roy Rogers,
Oh, yeah,
but stuff like that. A
yeah.
lot of those, the
Yeah.
old like the Poverty Row John Wayne films, and it's
Mm,
just they are what they are. But it got me
mm,
the actual taste to see, okay, what damage is this?
mm,
What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this sound?
mm,
And it got me really into that. And
mm,
from there, it kind of graduated to, okay, well, here's these other films too we're thinking about and looking at. And then that's kind of when the idea started of starting a home video line too, and
Yeah.
it came about with Lost Films with Herschel Gordon Lewis, and
Mm,
Massage Parlor Murders, and the early films from then, and it really took me down this whole kaleidoscope of
mm,
just everything going on. Like I had heard of stuff like you mentioned, like something weird.
mm,
Of course
mm,
I knew
mm,
about them,
mm,
but I didn't really know what that it really entailed. And from this, I really got to see what it all meant from like the inside out, and going through it all. And
mm,
I got to learn about film scanning,
mm.
cleaning the film, preserve actual physical preservation,
Yeah.
digital preservation, all of that stuff too.
Yeah.
So, uh, and doing it now, 10 years almost.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that sort of leads into my next question because, for those who, aren't privy to film restoration and that kind of terminology, like, with your company name, Vinegar Syndrome, what does that actually mean in terms
So
of,
vinegar, yeah. So Vinegar
yeah,
Syndrome, where that name actually came from, is
mm,
because it's kind essentially we're named after what we're actually fighting against.
mm, mm,
It's if you don't take care of the film elements, it starts to decompose,
mm,
and it gives off. You'll know you can't miss it. It's a really thick, bad vinegar odor.
yeah, right,
And What that means is that the film essentially is dying,
yeah,
and it will destroy the film after a certain amount of time. So
mm,
you get these films that now there's no cure all yet, as far
mm,
as I know. There's ways to treat it. There's ways to slow it down significantly,
mm,
but so far there's no like 100% cure against it. That being
mm,
said, there's always more advances. So, who knows down the line if something comes up and can actually like not only reverse the process, but
mm,
bring it back.
mm,
And that's kind of our mantra, is to preserve these films and preserve these elements. New York Ninja, which was a
yeah,
film that didn't
yeah.
exist. We made a 35 millimeter print of that. You
How?
know,
How did you do that? What was that process like behind that? Because
I didn't do that, so
yeah, 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 yeah,
it was made outside, but
yeah,
no, we got that. We're gonna start screening it. It looks great, and
yeah, yeah,
it's one of those things though where again it's about that physical preservation, trying to preserve the best elements possible.
mm,
If we preserve the negative, that's even better, because the
yeah,
negative is you know the ultimate, like, grandfathered element. So
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
preserve that, you're kind of all set, 'cause you can make prints off of that.
yeah.
You can make new scans and restorations off of that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like these restorations really are something else, man. Like, I mean, like I was talking to you before about, the Suckling, which was my first experience watching a Vinegar Syndrome release. And,
Yeah.
for those who don't know what the Suckling is, it's basically this horror film about a giant mutated fetus that gets flushed down a toilet in a like a brothel that kind of like moonlights as
It
a
was like a
an abortion
brothel.
house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It was
yeah.
a brothel slash abortion clinic, but then
That's right.
it had
Yeah,
toxic waste beneath it,
yeah.
and
That's it. That's it. That's it.
came back. Yeah, is it's a bizarre one, which is saying a lot from us. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just dirty, seedy, weird stuff.
yeah,
Like, and you guys kind of rival Criterion. Like, like some of these prints like look better than my 8.5 Criterion. Like so. I'm just wondering, like, what's actually the process for restoring? Like, because some of these must be really beaten up prints that you find. Like, how do you
I
go
mean,
through that?
it depends what you have.
Yeah,
Sometimes it can take, some if you're lucky, the original negative looks good, and you
yeah,
can use that, and we obviously restore everything, but
mm,
you can, usually it's the amount of time that
mm,
takes for the restorations,
mm.
versus off the top of my head, something like Pets.
Yeah, yeah,
The film Pets came from multiple non-negative elements, just because it was this film that, all the negatives are believed lost right now.
Mm,
Hopefully Armature is it's not destroyed until it's truly known that
mm,
it was destroyed. But
mm,
some of these films, unfortunately, negatives were destroyed at
mm,
the beginning. In the 70s, 80s, they weren't really thinking about this for film preservation, even,
mm,
owners of these films. And,
mm,
they would just make the prints and be like, all right, that's it. We don't need anything else for it. Let's move on to the next one.
mm,
And, they just sometimes elements would be gotten rid of and thrown
mm,
in dumpsters and thrown in the
mm.
ocean even. So
Yeah,
it's
wow. Yeah.
yeah. So but yeah, you don't know how long something's gonna take to be restored until you sit down and watch it all.
Mm,
Um, you know, it really depends on the project,
mm,
what you get.
I mean, that was like the case for like pigs as well, like right, like that restoration you guys did for pigs. 'Cause-
Yeah, and Pigs was special too because we
yeah,
essentially recreated the original director's cut.
yeah.
There was a couple other films like that too, off the top of my head, two other Milligan ones,
Wow.
Seed
Yeah, yeah.
and Flesh Pot on 42nd Street.
Great
They were
restoration, by the way.
thanks. They
Yeah.
were essentially full
Mm,
recreations of cuts that haven't been seen in
mm,
not 40 plus years, 30,
mm,
50
mm,
years almost. And again, that's part of the joy of doing this though,
mm,
is the kind of rediscovery of these, the original intended cuts
mm,
too
mm.
that just were thought long gone, especially with something like Pigs, where
Yeah,
that was, there were hints of that. I remember, I think it was could be wrong on this, but I thought it was the Trauma disc that had like all the trailers too, the other trailers for because it was retitled as other
yeah,
titles too.
yeah.
And Pigs we lucked out because we were able to track down the elements to
Mm,
bring that up,
mm,
so and put it back together in the original intention. And that
mm.
again really goes to it's the whole team who
Yeah,
able to do this and stuff. And you have Joe Rubin, who is like an encyclopedia of this film knowledge
yeah.
too. So knows about like is this film complete or not. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's an interesting argument to be made, like, with exploitation films, like, when you clean them up, is that how they're supposed to look? Because, I remember being 12 or 13, and I remember watching like stuff like The Evil Dead or the Texas Chainsaw
yeah.
Massacre on VHS for the first time, like even like Fulci, and you watch like some of these films and they look like snuff films,
Oh
like they
yeah.
look so grotesque. And it's like, do you feel like, when you are restoring these kind of films, you lose some of that grunginess, that comes into a new
I
restoration.
I just from doing this so much, and
Yeah,
maybe I'm biased towards this, I want
yeah,
to see things in the best presentation possible.
yeah,
Just and seeing, I think it's because there's so many others, which yeah, they're the grindhouse look is is a good feel and stuff. But then you'd have so many other VHSs where they're
mm,
just dark
mm,
and you really can't see what's going on at all.
yeah, yeah,
There are some films where you just can't tell what's going on. It's not even the damage, it's like the color clarity or stuff
mm,
like that, where it's
mm,
just the contrast was just so dark.
mm,
Versus seeing it now, you're seeing it like for the first time all over again,
yeah, yeah,
And I just think it's better to see it in its like original version,
mm,
just like a beautiful look. Even if it honestly with the content, even if it's something you like or dislike, if it looks great, that
mm.
it still works for us to
Yeah,
bring it
yeah,
back. So
yeah. Watch it in all its intended glory, essentially.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, like, and like, where are you guys actually finding this stuff? Because you must have a warehouse full of these kind of prints because you restored so much, and there's more to come. Like, where do you actually track these films down? How do you find them?
I mean, it's anywhere and everywhere, honestly.
Yeah, yeah,
we, you know, that said, we still try to do everything primarily in house. We have a film archive and
yeah.
film scanning and restoration area, all in one.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's sometimes that just can't happen, and
Mm,
we'll have stuff scanned elsewhere, but it will be still done in house.
mm,
It get to us in house for restoration and just about everything else. So it really depends on getting the films. I mean, we've gotten films through outright collections. Sometimes we've gotten
mm.
films through you know just uh just private people who wanted
Yeah.
to talk to us about them. So it ranges. It's
Yeah.
basically whatever you could think of a film getting to someone. That's how we could get them to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And what's
yeah,
the rarest find you've had?
rarest find.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, something like New York Ninja.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because that and more super credit to Curtis Spieler, who took he's a coworker of ours. He's part of the
Mm,
film restoration team. He does a lot of
mm,
special features work. He does a lot of work for us, and
mm,
he really took the time over a couple of years to put this
mm,
film back together.
mm,
And that was a film that
mm.
you had these original negative parts. Essentially, it was the original dailies and
Crazy.
takes of the
Yeah.
film, and it just didn't like it was never edited
Mm,
like into a feature film. It was no sound, no notes, no anything.
yeah.
But the fact that it was pretty much all, as far as we could tell, all the shots just about all intact,
Mm.
and we're able to finish that film
That's
and
crazy.
redub the voices and stuff. That's such a rarity.
Yeah.
you know um Now, not just us but other companies too, we've all had these like lost films rediscovered essentially too.
Yeah.
But New York Ninja was just one of those rare things where it was not only lost, it was really just unknown too,
Mm.
because it had never really come out or
Yeah.
anything like that. It's funny though, because now people are seeing it now. So, but the most known thing about it was the song at the end, the rap song by Bronx Style Bob, because he wrote that for the film, and that song actually did come out, like you
Wow.
know,
Yeah.
publicly in the '80s, and
Yeah.
it was played. It got radio play and everything, but
Mhm.
the movie didn't. It was never came out.
Well, I'd
So
never heard of it. I had never personally.
yeah.
I sort of consider myself fairly exploitation savvy, but I remember that popping up and being like, "What the fuck is this film? Like, where did this
No,
come from?"
no one knew it. And
Yeah.
there's probably other films like that, other
Yeah.
projects that got so close to being finished, and
Yeah.
just for whatever reason they weren't
Yeah.
finished. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, they, and then you hear stories. Not to go off on a little tangent, but you hear
No.
stories about even larger projects. You hear stories about, like, think Alfred Hitchcock, he had a film he got as far as, I forget, I don't know what the name of it is. I know
Yeah.
there's articles about like lost films and everything, but he got to as far as like screen testing and
Wow.
like heavy pre-production, but then the film was canceled or at the
Yeah.
last moment, and
Yeah.
you have all these films that are just so close to being shot or done or
Mm.
just even released. So
Yeah.
who
Where was
knows? Who
this in
knows?
Hitch's career? Was it later on or was it earlier on?
I don't remember, honestly. I
Okay.
I thought it
Yeah.
was later though. I could be wrong, but I thought it was after,
Mhm.
or it was near the end, kind of near
Yeah.
before Frenzy.
Oh, great. Frenzy's
Yeah.
great.
So, but again, that's kind of the thing, especially with the exploitation films. There seem to be more and more kind of lost films and other
Mm.
films just undiscovered yet.
Mm, mm, mm. And like, yeah, it's interesting because like, in this age where it's like everything is digital consumption, you can have any content you want by the click of a button, really. Like, and I actually read that you guys had a streaming service like very early on.
Yeah,
Um,
we had one. Yep, it kind of for more than a few reasons. We took it down after a while, but that something may come up in the future as well. So
Good.
and just take it from there. But
Please.
you could find our stuff, some of our films streaming out there too. I know Tammy and the T-Rex
Yeah,
is
great.
on streaming too, and there's a couple others, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, our bread and butter is still physical media.
Do you,
And yep, and a lot of places too don't stream special features. They
true.
just want the film, and you put in all this work,
Yeah.
you want to hear the behind the scenes of how this was made too.
Yeah.
So, you know, support physical media.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, have you found that like, this, digital media, has that affected you in any way? Or, your company, do you find that the need for physical media is dying down or will die down gradually?
No, I think with just speaking more generally
Yeah.
about these kind of more, n- you know, boutique labels, and I would include like even something like Criterion with that
Yeah.
is, yeah, you heard all these horror stories about like physical media going down and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that is honestly, it's true in some respects. And this for anyone too. You go, at least in America, you go to a Best Buy or any place like that, and they're cutting down their
Mm,
Blu-ray sections, and these are big
yeah.
studio titles too.
Yeah.
They're cut it. They used to be like aisles of
Mm,
this stuff, and now it's in one couple shelves.
mm,
And but I feel like for a, you know all of these boutique labels as a whole,
mm,
it's growing.
mm.
Um, especially with these more exploitative films, these horror
Yeah.
films, these ones that really a big studio isn't going to do. Now, there's
Mm,
exceptions. I feel like something like, me personally, I feel like something like Warner Archive is a great way to see these films in their archives too, and
mm,
a way to get them out. So you
mm.
have all of these other kind of niche companies too that I think are growing more, and I think it's for the better for all of us too.
Mm.
And you know but it's growing so far, and I think we've always talked about it. We're going to support it till the end. With
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it is, we'll keep going.
Yeah. I mean, like, it kind of proves just like what exploitation has always been doing, that like, sex and violence will sell and will always sell. Like
Yeah.
people are just always hungry for this kind of stuff. Um, you know,
it,
yeah,
it was funny with the exploitation films back then
yeah,
too, in a lot of ways, more than the studio ones, obviously,
mm,
but you kind of had a little bit more artistic freedom from
yeah,
what we've heard. Is
yeah,
because, well, the problem of course was you only had a certain budget,
mm,
to work with. You only had probably a week or two to
yeah,
shoot this film, and but you had these things you had to have.
mm,
But then a lot of times, the financiers would say, okay, here's just what we need, otherwise the film is yours, do whatever, as long as it
mm,
has these elements to the
mm,
exploitative elements, we're
mm.
good. Just put something out there. So
Yeah, exactly.
have it under an hour and a half, and
Yeah,
you're good to go. And they but they got these such interesting films out there,
yeah,
and even if I don't personally really like the film, I always find interest in
mm,
all of these films
mm,
that go out there. I mean, there's so much films that I'm like, you couldn't make this today, even if
yeah,
you wanted to. It was just like the perfect time, the perfect placement, the crew, whatever. Just that
yeah,
place at moment in time when they made this film that
mm.
really can't be replicated. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I mean, some of them have like just an incredibly raw power to them. Like even Climax of Blue Power, that Lee Frost roughie, that
Oh my
that like
god, yeah,
that predates Taxi Driver, like
yep,
Lustig's Maniac, and you watch something like that, it's just it's almost prophetic. It's such a brutal experience to watch. But these kind of films they're sort of a little bit ahead of the curve, I find, in some ways,
yeah,
like with what they present. But
yep, and
no, sorry. Yeah. But to kind of close off the talk, like, is there any specific exploitation films, that your label has produced that you would recommend for our audience to sort of, as a gateway?
Oh, one I always recommend. It's
Yeah.
just from really has a place in my heart.
Yeah.
Where is the Telephone Book,
Yeah, it's
and
great. Yeah.
yeah, it's for those who don't know what it is. It's this black and white. I guess in the basic plot, you could call it a sex comedy,
Yeah.
although it's way more than that. It's
Yeah.
art house. It's got I believe of more than a few Andy
Mm.
Warhol kind of players in the film. I
Mm.
know Undine, one or Undine, however you pronounce the name,
Yeah.
and oh god, I thought maybe Van Voren is in it too. There's a bunch of Andy Warhol players in the film, but it's this kind of kaleidoscope journey through you know 42nd
Mm.
Street, Manhattan, for
Mm.
this woman trying to find the world's greatest phone sex caller, who was played by, at the time, he was the voice, the actor who played the, and you don't see his face at all throughout the film. He's wearing a
Yeah.
pig mask, and he's wearing that great 70s flannel suit that looks like, used car salesman, but from the 70s. And
Yeah.
it's just one of those films you really could not replicate again, because it was shot black and white, except for a little spoilerific, but the end, which is this crazy, almost Robert Crumb style animation that just comes out of nowhere, but you
Mm.
kind of should have expected it anyways.
Mm.
You have the great music with it, and like these little segments of
Mm.
people confessing their weird sexual, cravings, and it's very funny because there's more than a few serious actors who turn
Yeah.
up to talk about this stuff
Yeah.
in the film,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, you find out, and then it was directed by one of the original writers of SNL way back
That's
in the
right.
day.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's just this kind of perfect film where,
Yeah.
again, you just did not. I When I watched it the first time, I had no idea what to expect, and
Mm.
it really blew me away with that.
Yeah.
Uh, One kind of more horror based one that
Mm.
I really genuinely love is this film called Bloodbeat,
Yeah.
which we did a restoration of and released. It's probably the best Christmas samurai ghost movie ever, I would say.
Yeah. I know of its
Yeah.
reputation, but never seen it. Never
Oh
seen it.
man,
So
it's up
yeah.
there for those kind of psychotronic, really like
Yeah.
bizarre
Cool.
ones.
Yeah.
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 So there's so many more, but it's those two are good. I think good starting points to kind of you know
Yeah.
see what you're seeing with us. You
Great.
know.
Great. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Brandon.
Yeah.
And for those who have just tuned in to the festival, go check out Vinegar Syndrome's website. They've got some fantastic stuff there. And we hope you enjoy the rest of it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, and have a great festival.
Thank you.